Welcome back. It is Monday, August 11th, and we're back with Beyond Packaging, where we break down the forces shaping packaging and everything in between. I'm Laura Foti.
Matthew Wright, the co-host. No time for jokes today, so we're just going to go.
Still the co-host. Today, we have some exciting news topics to cover. We also have an awesome guest, Amanda Sparks from Micronetbd. She's a seasoned supply chain leader who's now helping companies implement spec management. We work very closely with her at Specright, so thrilled to have her on. But before that, Matthew, I had a very, very busy weekend. I don't know about you. I think I spent the longest time shopping in a Costco this weekend. We were literally there for 2.5 hours. And I just got stuff that I'm like, every time I go to a Costco, I'm amazed at what I find. My favorite purchase that I had to tell you about is I think it's called Kinder, the barbecue sauce. Kinder. They have a 3-pack, and it's an amazing display case. It's like you literally carry it, and it's 3 different flavors. And I'm like, this is awesome. And it just made my day. I wanted to tell you about it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go pick one up. I did some barbecuing last night. Would have been nice. So I was doing my thing. So I'll check it out. Yeah, no, shopping there is just amazing. So.
Every time I go, I'm like delighted by the things. You know, I'm mostly buying things I didn't go in with the intention of buying, and that's probably the best part. But man, it really is hard to find things though.
Yeah, you buy stuff you didn't know you needed, but you do need.
Well, then we were buying stuff for other people because we got these like great deals of Purely Elizabeth granola that was like 30-ounce bags. We're like, we've never seen a 30-ounce bag. We're like calling up cousins and moms and getting everyone's order for it. But it was a blast. I'm super excited to be back here. So what do we have in the news? One of them is something I know near and dear to your heart, Matthew, and your vision to eliminate waste. From room service to recycling, hotels and resorts are switching to aluminum bottles. This was in packaging world. Many luxury hotel chains now like Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott, and Ritz-Carlton are partnering with, I think it's called Kopu Water, to replace imported glass water bottles with lightweight recyclable aluminum alternatives. This move shifts towards environmental sustainability goals. The aluminum scrap actually sells for about $1,000 to $2,000 per ton, giving it strong aftermarket demand. This is very interesting. You know, I've noticed an uptake in these kind of water bottles at hotel rooms because they're refillable. I know you have a lot of thoughts about plastic water bottles.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a great move. I think it's also a great branding move. I mean, I personally, I think aluminum just does a better job branding in a lot of cases. And so it definitely gives it a high end. Even if you run a thicker plastic, it gives you that high end feeling. And yeah, aluminum, there's a couple products that are really hard to recycle just from a logistics and cost basis, but aluminum tends to be one that's pretty good regionally to recycle. Certainly there's a shortage of it historically. So exciting to get some more and more recycling built up and collection better. But yeah, no, exciting products. And I think the hospitality space is a great space to lead as they're trying to lead in, bathroom products and some other products and make them more sustainable too right now.
Absolutely. It's such a great point about the regional recycling expertise. I remember as a kid, I grew up in Connecticut, and my mom and I would take our empty soda cans to Stop and Shop, and you would put them through, there'd be like that recycling center, and you'd put the cans there, and I think you'd get money back. And
yeah, you got money. I forget, Connecticut was always listed there, like 5 cents or something. It was a lot of money at some point. So.
Oh yeah, but to your point of, where are the loops that are already doing well today in terms of recycling? Aluminum's a great one, so why not put water in it? I personally like the aluminum water bottle just because I tend, like you, to travel through airports a lot. And, if you buy it at an airport, you drink it there, you bring it to your hotel, you empty it out, you can refill it. Every airport now has refillable water bottle stations.
No, that's what I was going to say. I like the aluminum when I travel for that back reason. I grab it at the airport and I use it for the week while I'm traveling. And yeah, no, it's a great product. And I don't know if you remember in Summit where the Tennessee legislature was there and talking about and that was all about aluminum recycling was really what their focus was. So It's kind of fun to see what they're doing there.
I love this one. And listen, I really appreciate and have deep admiration for people who carry water bottles with them on airplanes, like, their Yetis or their Stanleys. But I try to pack so little that, I have these massive Yeti water bottles, and I'm like, it just is easier and more convenient when you travel to do that. So love that trend. There's another policy shift happening. This was in Packaging Dive. A policy shift keeps chemical footprint efforts in pendulum swing. So, a wave of new policies targeting chemical usage in packaging. We've heard a lot about PFAS, certainly heavy metals, is prompting companies to rethink chemical tracking and transparency. There's been public concern about safety and sustainability of chemicals in packaging, and demand for safer alternatives has driven action. Several states have laws regulating chemicals in plastic packaging. California, our state, certainly no surprise there. Maine, Minnesota, and New York. Matthew, what do you think about this? We've heard a lot about ingredients in food, but maybe those outside of packaging haven't really thought about what goes into the packaging.
Well, you know me, I've thought about that for most of my life, and won't get into all the stories. But no, I think it's really important that we know what's in packaging, especially direct food contact packaging, right, where packaging itself can be absorbed over some period of time with changes in temperature, climate, et cetera. So I've always been the one of the mindset that more information is better than not enough. And so I think just sharing that, making it visible. Maybe not everybody cares, but those that do and want to care should have access to know what's in their packaging, down to the chemicals and products they come from.
Yeah, and I've learned so much from you over the years about packaging and food contact packaging. And listen, we love packaging. We're huge advocates. But one of the things that I've learned is when I get takeout, I immediately take it out of the package and put it on a plate. When I go to reheat food, if it's in some kind of takeout container, I now transfer it. When I was little, you would just throw that styrofoam container in the microwave and call it a day. And now there's more awareness that maybe that's not the best thing for us to be doing as consumers.
Well, and I guess on the flip side, the fairness of why there might be resistance from a manufacturer, I don't think it's from not disclosing information. It's from the challenge to keep that information updated if it changes, if they get a new source of supply, a new product. Which one are they giving information on? And obviously, Spec Data Management does that for you. So it's at your fingertips, it's automated, it's an app. It's all this modern kind of technology. But if you look at it from a legacy standpoint, yeah, it's hard to make that change known broadly. But that's just not an excuse anymore with Spec Data.
That's a great point. I was talking to one of our customers today about the data that they're capturing. And, many companies are now capturing sustainability data. They didn't capture that on their packaging a year ago even, or
right.
Certainly a few years ago. And to your point, if we want to have, awareness about the chemicals in our packaging, it starts with, are we tracking that data? Or is that data living with a supplier and I as a brand owner don't have visibility? I think, again, the macro trend around this is we have to be creating data systems, and we'll talk about this with Amanda. We have to be gathering this data because consumers want to know about it. Consumers, governments, certainly people within your company, legal teams are going to come to you and say, does our packaging have XYZ? And you're going to want to start to capture this information so you can have an answer at your fingertips, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's not a nice to have anymore. It's just an expectation. I've said it, and you've heard this from me. It's like, we should have been asking for this a long time ago. Transparency of information of what we're consuming or touching with our body should not be something that's hard to do or new. So yeah, we need to get there.
Yeah, we will. I certainly get to see every day the progress everyone's making. So that's awesome to have. But we're excited to have Amanda join us for our guest appearance today. Amanda, welcome to Beyond Packaging.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Amanda and I were, Matthew, Amanda and I were just in my favorite part of the country, Pennsylvania, my hometown area, working on a client together. And we got to spend an awesome few days outside of Philadelphia. It was a little humid, but we had a great time. And I was just really inspired by Amanda's background. She sits similar to us, really at the intersection of manufacturing and technology. So Amanda, would love for you to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am the Vice President of Revenue at Micronetbd, and our founder, George Ayub, has over a decade of experience with Salesforce consulting in a lot of different verticals, including working with Specright in the supply chain space. And really, I have a dual role in helping Micronetbd grow their revenue stream, but Specright holds a special place in my heart, and I really love leading the Specright practice because of my background in supply chain, which is where I spent most of my career before coming to Micronetbd.
That's a great introduction. And so, yeah, would love for you to talk about, early on those experiences in supply chain that kind of shaped how you think about helping companies transform their supply chain with technology.
Sure. So when I first graduated college, I was a math teacher for about 10 years. And so I'm analytical and quantitative is my background. And I pivoted to business and became a supply chain analyst, kind of just fell into it a little bit. I really didn't know what I was doing at first. And I was at a company called Food Lion, which is a grocery store in the southeast of the United States. And I was assigned a lot of different projects, but one project that really stood out for me as being relevant to the work that I have with Specright was I was assigned to do a new product launch with private label frozen fish. And as the supply chain analyst on this project, I was in charge of just kind of working with internal and external stakeholders to bring this product to market. It took about 18 months from concept all the way to commercialization of this product and getting it into the stores. Everything from looking where we're going to source our raw material, who's going to actually produce this, what suppliers, negotiating the pricing, cold storage for the product, artwork, all of it, packaging. And through that time, Food Lion went through a few layoffs. I had 3 manager changes, and I was new to business. I didn't really know how this all worked. I didn't understand things like bias for action and ownership and some of those key leadership principles that are really important to be successful in a business environment. And admittedly, Laura, I had a little bit of what's the word? I was nervous, right? I didn't have all the confidence in the world. Like, I'm supposed to lead this project, but I mean, I'm not the category manager for the category. I'm not the private label manager. I'm not the VP of product. And I'm just this girl that they put in charge from the supply chain team. And so what do I do here? But this product has to be launched. The date is still out there. And so, I really had to overcome a lot of those nervousness and a lot of that lack of confidence, I guess you could say. Imposter syndrome. That's the word I was trying to think of. I had to overcome that. And by the end of the project, after all of those challenges, the DC manager at the DC that was closest to my headquarters called me and said, "Well, your pallet has arrived." And I drove down there and I took a picture of myself, a selfie with this pallet of the frozen fish. And then a couple of days later, went to the store and took a picture of myself with it in the frozen fish aisle. And it was just a really cool example of how, our Specright customers, they're not just working with, just random data. These specifications are actual. This represents real product. It represents real things that are going to consumers. It's real business that they're trying to do, and I think we need to keep that in mind. That for all of them, they're thinking about that end result, which is making a difference in the day-to-day lives of their consumers, and they all have that same passion that I did when I was that young supply chain analyst. So I try to keep that in mind.
No, I think, I'm sure your math teacher background probably helped you out because, a lot of what it takes to bring a product to market is having the right data. And you talked a little bit about the imposter syndrome. And what I see is a lot of people have that simply because they don't have visibility into all the data. So they feel like they're constantly needing to ask other people for help. How have you seen trends and data change around products and packaging compare kind of where we are now to where we were, 5 or even 10 years ago?
Yeah. So one of the things that you guys mentioned was around sustainability and sustainability tracking and sustainability goals. And one of the customers was talking about they have like a European parent, but then they have like a division in the US. And so European parent sets a really high target for sustainability because that tends to be the trend where sometimes they are a little bit more forward thinking. And so, for example, we're going to reduce use of, I think it was expanded polystyrene, EPS, by 10% by 2030. And so then they've got this US division that doesn't even know what percentage of EPS they have in their packaging specifications right now. And so the challenge for them is, how can we even measure how much we're using today so that we can then begin to try to track towards that 10% reduction by 2030? So I think that the biggest change that I'm seeing is people, to your point, Laura, starting to try to get that visibility to what is in the materials that they're using for their packaging, so that they can start to align to some of these goals that are coming down from the very, very top of their organizations. Additionally, they have this data in a lot of disparate systems, and or sometimes outside of their own organizations, like with suppliers. And the beauty of a system like Specright is, with supplier collaboration, even if it's living with your suppliers, you can have your suppliers either import that or update it within the Specright system so that it can all be inside of Specright, and you can have that aggregation available to you in that one system, which I think is really key. Because it all starts with that visibility. Before you can start manipulating or understanding it, you got to get it into one place. So,
I love what you said, Amanda, about the fact that a lot of these folks don't have this data. It lives with their suppliers. And when I think about technology implementations, I think about three things. It's never just the technology. It's people, it's process, it's technology. And I think you really hit, the nail on the head of when you want to reduce your EPS by 10%, it's not just implementing a process. It's not just putting a person on it. Where are you putting that data? How are you creating a process to make sure that data is updated? How do you make sure people are using that information to action the goal? So I'd love for you to share, you're helping companies deploy Specright. You're working with them to take what they've deployed and iterate on it as new regulations come out and they need to track new things. What are some challenges you see when trying to get a team up and running with a successful technology implementation?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges is oftentimes even some of these conversations that we're having might be beyond their current capabilities internally. So some companies maybe aren't thinking that far ahead, but you bring them along to where they are today, but you go ahead and offer them the infrastructure to think towards tomorrow. So you might say, hey, the best practice would be to start tracking some of these things for sustainability, to start thinking about getting this data into one place. So we're going to give you that infrastructure. You can leave it blank for now. You don't actually have to fill it in for now. But you might start wanting to think about having your suppliers fill this in. So maybe it's a 1-year goal, right? To start requiring your suppliers to send this information, or maybe you start getting an export from all your suppliers and having someone import it into Specright within the next year or something along those lines. So it's really, implementation of Specright is more than just taking requirements and building a system. It's really change management consulting in a way, because if your implementation partner doesn't include that little bit of extra, you run the risk of your Specright customer stopping short of what they really need to do, which is thinking through some of this process, the people and the process beyond just what they've bought Specright for, which is oftentimes 1 or 2 problems that they're trying to solve short term. And a lot of times, by the time they get their budget approved, they've already got 2 or 3 more problems that maybe they haven't got the budget to solve yet, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's why we kind of have to help them think through that. I also think that, making sure that our ICs and our ICs are trained in supply chain and packaging basics so that they can kind of help guide them on those areas that might still be out of scope, but helping them think through the right questions to ask the Specright team after the implementation to keep them, keep them going on their Specright journey for their next, expansion of their system. Yeah.
One thing that I love that you mentioned is about the change management piece, because one of the things we preach is to use, when you move to a spec management, when you start to digitize things that were in spreadsheets or shared drives or SharePoint, it's a great opportunity to rethink your process.
Yes.
And maybe it doesn't need to be 90 steps. Maybe it needs to be 9. Maybe you can think about doing NPD in this way because you have all this data in one place. So on the positive end, what words of wisdom would you have for people embarking on this transformation that they can we have a lot of listeners who are dealing with a lot of the problems we talked about, of the data's all over the place. I have these new goals. What words of wisdom would you have for people starting out on the journey?
I would say, don't try to do what you're doing today in Specright. Think about how can you use Specright to do something better, to do spec management in a better way, right? And to scaffold yourself to a better way of doing spec management. So give us what you're doing today and let us work with you to implement really best practices for spec management. So it's, yes, you've brought your Specright sales team some of your problems, and we've helped you to identify how Specright can solve some of those problems. But it's really like, let's look at the bigger picture. And again, to your point, Laura, like, we're not going to be able to solve it all, and you're not going to be able to people, process, and system everything all at once, because that's overwhelming. And change management, part of change management really is like not biting off more than you can chew. But we really want to understand, we want to do better than what you've been doing. And that means we've got to really rip it apart and rebuild it. And so be open to that. Be open to that and not scared of it. Because, what you're doing with, I like to say, masking tape and bubblegum, a lot of times what you're doing is masking tape and bubblegum. And what we want it to be is a much more well-oiled machine, and much more efficient. And they might say, well, what about this person? This person sits here and they do this thing, and what are they going to do now? Well, what a beautiful problem to have, right? Because now you've got a person who can do something that's much smarter and more strategic, because they're not putting masking tape and bubblegum on something, right? So, that's a good problem to have. So be open to the change and see it as a positive, the process. But it can be very daunting, right? And especially the first part of the process. So just try to stay positive and optimistic, and lean on Specright, lean on your implementation team to help you, and trust that they've been through this before. It's not all on you.
I love that. Matthew, I saw you came off mute. These are a lot of topics you're passionate about.
Yeah, no, first of all, Amanda, great words of wisdom, and really well said, from your history and point of view. No, I was thinking about something completely different, which was, it's fun to see companies grow with the help of Specright. It's fun to see, new companies start because of Specright. We're celebrating some internal goals around growth and where the company's reached, but it's fun to see other companies getting to take advantage of that too. So we're happy for your support.
Oh, yes. We are really enjoying working with you guys and getting to see companies really be transformed through your product, and then through the functionality that I've seen you guys grow even in the past year, working with your customers and seeing your product evolution over the past year. That's been really exciting too. And to see that impact on your customers. So kudos to you guys. Yeah.
We appreciate that. I mean, our partners, our customers, you guys have such an impact on what we prioritize and develop. We have some really exciting things we're doing with AI. If you're in tech, you hear all about AI. I think if you're in supply chain and product development, you hear a little less about it. So it really is fun to bring the technology we see as consumers to this world, one that you've lived in. Amanda, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. I hope to see you again on the road soon at a customer. And thanks for being a great partner. We really appreciate the Micronetbd team. So for our listeners, whether you're knee deep in your digital transformation or just starting to kick it off, you're not alone. Amanda gave you some great advice. Step back, look at the bigger picture. Don't be afraid to stop doing the tape and bubblegum approach, and walk, crawl, run. So Amanda, thank you so much. We will now go off the shelf with Matt Dingy. Take care, Amanda.
Thank you.
All right, we're back off the shelf with Matt Dingy. Matt, what do you have for us today?
So today we're going to an example of actually where the collection was used to create this package. So I have that one as well, but this is one of the most iconic ones in our collection, and it's from Citrus Hill, which you may not remember the brand, but they were among the first to go to a screw cap on a orange juice carton. At the time, I believe they're owned by Procter and Gamble.
Yep. I remember this well.
And so this one is here.
It's such a great innovation at the time. It seems so minuscule today, but for, again, dating ourselves, for those that back up before that, I remember when you open that, first of all, you had to get it open right, and if not, you tore it kind of weird. And then over, probably half the pores, it just became soggy. It was just a disaster, but it's all we knew, right? It's all you could kind of use. And then that came out, it's one of those simple, but probably very complex things that somebody had to design and come up with. And obviously was solving a consumer feedback piece. Undoubtedly they were getting feedback that I just gave, and trying to figure out how to do it differently without, turning the whole thing into, a plastic bottle, which we saw, also. So yeah, great sample, great innovation at the time. And it's obviously still existing to some level today.
It's always amazing to me how products and by extension packaging can bring us back to a moment in time and a memory. And in my mind, as soon as I saw that, I'm back in the house we grew up in Greenhurst Road in Connecticut, and I'm shaking the orange juice carton as like a 5 or 6 year old kid. I remember that vividly. And it's just amazing to me that products stay with us in weird ways like that. I mean, and I always associate that with orange juice, right? Because it was pulp. You had to shake it before you would pour it. Oh, that's such a great, and I love the design. Just what a great memory.
It was just called orange juice, Laura?
It was a certain brand. It wasn't the brand that I saw.
But it didn't have 87 flavors. It was orange juice.
Yeah, it didn't have it wasn't orange lemonade. It wasn't orange lime. It wasn't organic, probably. Sure. Probably good old-fashioned orange juice. But I also love, Matt, if you can pull it back up, I love the design and the label. I mean, that is so beautiful. I feel like this type of design, I'm not a graphic designer, so please comment in. I feel like this trend has come back in recent years where it's kind of like I don't know if you'd call it a flat design. I really like some of the colors. It really is simple and really beautiful. So, what a good one. I haven't had a glass of orange juice in years. I'm going to have one this weekend. Awesome.
Great
Thanks,
stuff.
Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Love it.
Yep.